Welcome everyone. We are here today to discuss digital fundraising events, and this is the second in a series that we started a couple of weeks ago for organizations that are in the midst of dealing with COVID-19 and the community development and affordable housing sectors. And back in early April, late March, when we started really hearing from partners about the challenges they were experiencing during COVID, we started to plan for some content that would speak directly to these specific needs in these very strange and unprecedented times. Our last webinar was about managing a third-party property manager during COVID-19, and so you can check that out on the Enterprise website if that's of interest to you. There's a recording to that. But today we're focused on a different but also very important topic, which is how to shift an in-person fundraising event into the digital space. We know that CDCs and affordable housing developers, nonprofits in general, rely on in-person fundraising events to raise very precious, unrestricted revenue for the year. And we heard almost across the board from our partners in every single market that Enterprise operates in that they were very concerned about the loss of that unrestricted revenue. This is a totally new format to go to digital. And so how best to do that? And thankfully, at Enterprise, we've got some internal expertise that we thought we would just put forward and share what we know about working in a digital space for these kinds of gatherings and fundraising events. And also, we have some expertise in the form of trusted vendors, consultants that we've worked with over the years that have generously agreed to come and share their experience and their expertise. And so that's what we're going to do today, is just bring a discussion forward to you in hopes that you can develop some tips and tricks yourself as you go out and plan these events for your own organization. And so with that, I'm going to just ask our panelists, Cathy and Erin, who are going to be in discussion with me today, to introduce yourselves. And Cathy and Erin, if you wouldn't mind, obviously sharing your name and your organizational affiliation, and kind of what specific areas of expertise that you are bringing to the conversation in terms of digital fundraising and event planning. And then also would love to know if there's a habit or a hobby that you might have developed during COVID, either silly or serious. I would love to hear about that. Cathy, do you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. Hello, my name is Cathy Atria. I work with Enterprise Community Partners for about the last 3 years. And my title is I'm the Event and Revenue Manager, which basically means I'm responsible for 3 galas at Enterprise, 1 in New York, 2 in California. And in addition to those large events, there's also a number of small events that I'm responsible for in the New York market. So we'll talk a little bit more today about how those are going digital. And I work out of our New York office, like I said, but for the last 5 months, I am on Long Island. So that leads to my COVID hobby. Although I've always been a jigsaw puzzle enthusiast, I have had so much more time to do that in the last 5 months. So I've completed about 10 puzzles, and I just bought a new one that I'm saving for the winter because I think we'll still be here. So that's a 6,000 piece. That's what I'm doing.
Oh my gosh, 6,000. Wow, that's for real. Okay, thanks, Cathy.
Absolutely.
Erin?
Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous. Hi, I'm Erin Rynn. I'm with Sequence Events, longtime partner of Enterprise, who we love working with so much. We are based in New York City. I am personally in my home in Nyack, about 20 miles outside of the city. I'm the Senior Director of Projects and Team Dynamic, which basically means I oversee the teams and the projects and keeping our processes that allow us to be really buttoned up and organized in check. And today I'm excited to talk more with Cathy and learn, what nonprofits are facing right now. We know it's such a challenging time to fundraise, and we're really here to take them, from live to digital, in addition to helping with some of those fundraising goals and just some more strategic, creative ideas to get people to attend. And I have two 4-year-olds, so hobbies are far from my life right now. So as sad as this is, what I have enjoyed doing since I don't have a commute anymore is I wake up before my kids are up, I pour coffee and I watch the news. It's sad but true.
Lovely. All right. Fantastic. Well, I think this is going to be a terrific discussion. I want to just tee it up a little bit to say, first and foremost, this is really intended to share, how you should approach this kind of event, things to ask yourself, things to ask your partners or vendors that you're considering. We're not going to share, specific recommendations for technology platforms or specific, vendors or consultants, because as will become very apparent in the conversation with Erin and Cathy, it's so contextual. It's so dependent on what kind of event you're doing, on your organization and your goals, really. So it really wouldn't be, appropriate or our place to kind of lock in specific recommendations. That said, there's a lot of knowledge to share, and we're so happy, as we've said, Sequence does work with Enterprise. They're a trusted partner and vendor of ours, and so we're grateful to Erin for her willingness to share her expertise, and of course, Cathy, as you heard, has a lot of information and knowledge to share as well. So we are excited. Let's dive in. First question, and I'm going to turn to Erin first. Let's start with just the advantages of a virtual fundraising event. Is it always worth it to try to convert an in-person event in the digital space?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question. And our answer is, truly it depends on the organization, their event goals, beyond fundraising, of course, and the people who attend. There's tons who transition this fall because they need to maintain a certain connectivity to their donors and their stakeholders. And others felt it might need to be pushed off because of the natural synergy in the room with people and how that works best for their goals. We find the truth of the matter is, it's harder to fundraise in a virtual environment. It's not impossible by any means, it's just harder. So that said, with proper planning and strategical discussions on what you're trying to accomplish, it can really be done. And we've actually heard a lot of people say they've raised more money online, which is really encouraging and really exciting. So our advice is honestly to try and leverage the pros to going virtual. There are a lot of those. There's things you can do here you would not do in a cavernous ballroom. Some of those examples are a broader reach to your attendees, beyond your immediate location, celebrity meet and greets, access to those VIPs, roundtable discussions. There's metrics and analytics that are always attached to the platform, so you can see, who's engaged, and a very, very high level of sponsor ROIs beyond just a logo on a screen, which is really exciting. So tapping into that in the long run will really garner success, we found.
Great, thanks, Erin. Cathy, anything to add, particularly on the, enterprise experience as you were thinking about, whether or how to convert any of the enterprise events that you typically plan in the digital space?
Yeah, and backing off with what Erin just said, we really looked at each event that we run individually. So we didn't just make a collective blanket answer. So even of the 3 galas, we're looking at what's the right thing to do for each event. And then I will also say for one of our smaller events, which we usually have a luncheon in May. And when that time came for that, we decided for that specific event to forego the luncheon, but we didn't just give up on it. Instead, we ran an online campaign, a fundraising campaign. So I think it's important, and that's what Erin was talking about too, is really to look at each one, and you don't have to just give up on it because we're not able to meet in person, but what are some other alternatives so that you can still raise necessary funding for your organization?
Yeah, thanks, Cathy. How about, and you touched a bit on this, Erin, how do you maximize participation in a digital space?
Yeah, I mean, this, our take here is it's a really good opportunity to take some chances. It's a weird year. In live, people are kind of resilient to change. We get it. It's the if it ain't broke mentality. But people are going to be more forgiving, So as Cathy said, of course, look at each event. They have different goals, different crowds. But it's a really great year to infuse some cool ideas beyond, the talking heads and the video messaging. We've seen some really cool ideas with comedy tracks and stints of stand-ups. We've seen musical performances, cooking demos, mixology cocktail hours. I mean, weaving that in, of course, in a thoughtful way where your message is still at the forefront is really fun. And of course, I'll always come back to, if someone has a relationship with a celebrity, a cameo can never hurt. A live, message, something pre-recorded. It's a very effective way to draw people into your event that day, but it's not the only way, of course.
Yeah, and that prompts too, celebrity is sort of in the eye of the beholder, right? It can be a local celebrity, a local newscaster, a local, sports figure, or even just a neighborhood or community person that, everyone knows that's really well networked. Of course, if you can get, A-list Hollywood, that that works too. Cathy, anything to add on that front on participation?
Yeah, again, like you just said, A-list always works. But know that if you know a celebrity, that's great. There are also a lot of opportunities, because we are in a virtual world, that it's the time to take a chance. So you might be able to get a celebrity because it's virtual.
Right.
And there might be a fee associated, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, the world's open right now. It's really exciting that way.
It doesn't hurt to take a chance.
Right.
How about technology platforms? So I would love, I'm going to turn to you, Erin, first. Can you give us a landscape of how you should just even approach this decision of what platform to use to host the events? Like what's sort of the decision tree almost that you need to follow for that?
Yes, it is. It's a large tree. It's honestly the $1 million question. And I wish so much it was as simple as use X platform. It's just not. We often compare the platform to the venue. We never suggest a random space for an event without asking targeted questions first. And the platform's really no different. It's possibly even more dependent on these factors. So we recommend definitely not jumping the gun too early in the process to race and book a platform you may have read about online. It's really important to identify your goals, audience needs up front, and that will inform the choices. The platforms were really built to support very different kinds of events. Probably years ago, they were really just meant for conferences and webinars. And now it's, is it a simple stream? Are you really trying to just get content, entertainment, short and sweet out? Great. Is it something more engaging? You want people to network and obviously donate. Or do you want a full-on experience with one-to-one FaceTime on cameras and meetups and networking and enhancements for connectivity, in addition to a content library to download lots of media, more for a conference, but we've seen nonprofits do it. There's a lot of information there. So truthfully, people are honestly more worrying less about the platform right now and what's the perfect fit and what are they featuring? What is the beautifully produced videos with eye-catching graphics and transitions and animations to really keep people engaged throughout, the 30 minutes or to an hour that the people are on the platform watching the event. And those are really the questions we're asking first. And then of course, we're down into what is the platform that's the best for this.
Thanks, Erin. Cathy, anything to add on that one?
I think this is a place where your organization really needs to talk to each other about what are you looking to produce. And this is also a space where we've done a lot of talking with our vendor as far as what's the outcome that we want on this. Because if you don't have the in-house expertise about all these platforms, this is where you need to do some research.
Yep, fair enough. And I didn't realize until talking with you ladies, there's sort of specific fundraising, platforms, and then there's kind of more the networking and the gathering. So even just having in your mind the distinction of purpose for both of those, and if you're looking at a platform thinking, which does it fall into one or the other category, and does that bigger question, does that really fit the needs that we're trying to accomplish for this event? So I think that's great advice. All right, I think that we shouldn't go any longer without talking about money, because of course, nonprofits are budget conscious. And so, Cathy, I'm gonna have you maybe kick us off for this one. I'd love to get your sense of what types of expenses that you really recommend, our partners or nonprofits kind of spend their money on. What's worth it usually in terms of general categories of expenses, and in other words, like what are the high value things that you don't necessarily want to kind of skimp on?
Right. Yeah, and I'm glad we're talking about this, because I think there is a bit of a misnomer out there that, oh, we're going to go virtual, so it's going to be free. And it's not free. But that's okay to know and understand right up front. There are going to be costs with going virtually. And I won't spend time talking about the staffing, like the internal staffing cost, because that's almost a fixed cost. But you will have costs associated with your virtual event as well. So they're going to be much less. Nobody's getting served a dinner, or at least I don't think so with most virtual events. We're not sending dinners. So there's that piece that is removed. But you do want to look at a couple of things. You do want to look at your platform. And by that, I mean, are you going to be working with a production company? Are you going to work with an outside events vendor? And those are things that you might have done in the past anyway, and now you're working with them in a different way, which is what we're doing at Enterprise. We're just working differently, but we still have that cost in there. So I think those are two important things to really look at, and creating a realistic budget around that. Talk to some other organizations, talk to your vendors, and get some pricing around that. The other thing is that you're going to, although, you know, in the virtual world, you're lucky that everybody has a cell phone, and believe it or not, you can use those cell phones to record your content. You don't need anything much more sophisticated than your Android or your iPhone. So that's a great thing, but there might be some other investments. You want to make sure your lighting is good. You want to make sure people's, their microphones are good. Those are all little things, but they're just things to start keeping track of. And then I'm going to come back to what we did just touch on briefly earlier was, is there an entertainment portion of your event? Be that a featured speaker, AKA celebrity, are you going to have some kind of a musical performance or some kind of an act? They might be asking for a fee or their honorarium, which is a fee. So budgeting around that. So those are just some things to think about. But again, the notion of it's virtual means it's $0. I think that has been dispelled. I don't know, Erin, if you have more to add to that.
I mean, you nailed it, Cathy. Yes, that all of that is true. And so I'm so glad you said it. Yeah, I mean, it's not free for sure. I think a lot of people budget for the platform. I think that was, you know, when this all happened this spring, everyone just in a Sequence 2 immediately ran to like the platform. And we've all since learned, you know, there's so much more that goes into that, into hosting your event. Of course, the platform can be free, Zoom, right? Most people don't want Zoom for their fully baked event. We've seen platforms go up to $100,000. Of course, that's with several bells and whistles, not something that maybe even would be a good fit for most of our nonprofit partners, but it really can range. And it really is about asking good questions when you're talking to them. A lot of platforms kind of tell you they can do it all, but then you still need an AV production partner, not with all of them, but with a lot of them on the back end to run certain videos, to stream it, to have live elements. All those things are not necessarily very apparent on their website or even on their demos. And so it's really just, you know, find out what your event format is, tell the platform that, and make sure they're pricing it all out. In addition to really maybe even consider having a contingency line item in your budget. We've seen people 2 or 3 weeks into the process decide they want a really cool new feature to engage their attendees. It may not be coded into the platform. It could be possibly embedded or added in. There will be a cost for that. So if you're not sure that the path you're taking is where you'll end up, leave yourself room for some money, for some creativity, and that will, I think, go a long way. So you're not, you know, trying to find money at the 11th hour to do something really exciting.
I think there's some great tips in there. So, you know, the contingency line item in the budget, the knowing what you want in terms of your goals and general run of show, and asking explicitly with a platform vendor, would I need another vendor for X, Y, and Z in my run of show? Because they might be a little, they're playing, you know, they might not be upfront about that. That's great. Could you guys break down, you know, if we're talking about just how to maximize money in the door, right, which is the ultimate goal for a lot of these events. I mean, sometimes it's networking, but I know for a lot of our partners, it's like, how do we maximize getting the revenue, unrestricted revenue that we need? And I know you mentioned earlier sponsorships versus donations. And if you could just maybe put a little color on, you know, what would a sponsorship sort of like look like? How does money come in the door of that venue versus different ways to structure a donation coming in, whether it's paying for a ticket or, you know, an auction, or, you know, just creative things, I guess, that you've seen in both categories that might prompt some things in our viewers.
Yeah, I'll probably let Cathy maybe speak to ticket sales. I think that's very specific to the organization. And I think, you know your audience better. Is this the kind of event that people would pay to get in the door? There's always that gamble. You want people on because then they donate. You want to scare anyone away. But sometimes there's even that psychology of, oh, I have to pay to get in, you know? And so it's kind of weighing that. And it really, people know their audience, and who comes and what they would do. On the sponsor side, we have definitely seen a very big ROI in virtual, which is exciting. I think in the bottom, it was either a logo internal or maybe on the screen, you know, as I mentioned earlier. Now, sponsors can really kind of cover the cost for a lot of different parts of even the platform. We've seen, you know, the technology today brought to you by blah, and even product placement in videos, something as silly as a mug, or a commercial break in between different videos or different segments that are live. There's honestly a really long list of places you can put them, in addition to the fact that platforms nowadays will let you kind of scroll the logos in the area on the interface, not just a banner. Of course, the banner is maybe the title sponsor. But if you do have them rotating somewhere, not only is it just constantly visible in a way that's catching your eye, but you can click it and it will take you right to their website, which is something that isn't that instant access to information wasn't really there in live. It was kind of, again, a stale logo somewhere. So I think the metrics and the analytics of who's clicking, in addition to the ability to click, really gets sponsors jazzed to want to participate. And we think that that's really exciting. So I think if you can get ahead of that when you're having those conversations, you know, how much money do you need? How much money do you want? Tell them. I mean, it's a lot of visibility. They should be happy to donate as much now. I think it's pretty clear that these sponsors aren't coming to your events to eat the steak dinner, no matter how delicious it may be. They're coming to donate to your cause, but also to get their brand out there, or their logo. And that can happen better now than before.
Yeah, terrific.
Yeah, and I'll just continue on the sponsorships. We all know running special events that's where the money comes from. It's sponsorships. And just because we're going virtual doesn't mean don't ask. Ask, you know, you've built these relationships for so many years with all of these sponsors and these donors. Continue. So ask them. And, you know, a lot of organizations have talked about, well, we're virtual. Do we have to ask for different amounts? And should we lower what we're asking for? And again, I think that you have to think about your organization and where you want to go with that. I will tell you what we're doing is we did not ask for lower amounts. We stayed with, these are our sponsorship levels. And we made, again, like everybody would do, is you make the pitch this year being why you need the same, why the cause is greater due to the circumstances we're in. Again, that will be different per organization, but that's what we've done. And I will tell you, you know, our events, we have several coming up this fall, and so far we've had a good response from our sponsors. Many of them have come back at the levels they were at when we served them the steak and chicken dinner, as you spoke about. So I do think that's an important thing, and it's been an aha moment and an evolving moment of, oh, we can ask them for the same sponsorship because we've built that relationship over so many years. I just think that's important to remember.
Great advice. Yeah, thanks, Cathy. All right, I'd love to shift to some more nuts and bolts, you know, run of show. What do these things actually look like? So, Erin, if you could just kind of walk us through an example run of show for a virtual fundraising event. You know, how long? I know it's going to depend, but sort of in your experience, what works? What the programming might look like, you know, how might donations work, or other pieces of the event, just to give, you know, paint folks a picture of what these things can look like.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of factors here to consider. I think, you know, first and foremost is the attention span, right? We find 40 minutes-ish to be pretty safe. That doesn't have to consider in the pre and post show. The cool thing about platforms is you can, or even a website, no matter who's hosting, you can have a landing page with a countdown clock. People love a countdown clock that's kind of ticking down before the event starts. And you can have cocktails then, you can feature videos, you can have logos. So it's almost like a time and space that isn't focused on your show. It can just be people rolling in. It's the equivalent of the cocktail hour, so to speak. And that's a cool place of visibility that's totally on the guest, right, of when they want to join. So I think that's a good thing to consider and a good thing to keep in mind. Another thing, just, starting kind of at the beginning of the process also, is just to really not retrofit your goals from in-person to virtual. Don't copy paste that run of show. You really want to think about the on-screen presence, what's going to get people involved, what's going to get people excited. Something to keep in mind, people are on Zoom all day at work. They're possibly able to be out more in the evenings, give or take where we are. So you don't want to lose them, and you want to make sure they're logging in, but they don't want to see, 2 hours on their calendar, allocated for this show. So I think that's good. I think the third kind of piece to really think about is the implications of a pre-record versus a live show when you're really thinking about your format. We find the sweet spot to be a mix. Obviously, a fully pre-recorded show leaves less room for those dreaded technical glitches we've seen. Fully pre-recorded, on the other hand, can prove to be a little stale. If you miss something big in the news, which, let's face it, is daily, your content can appear old, possibly even tone deaf, depending on the messaging that you're trying to get out. We like to push for the simu-live model of pre-recording. You can get some good content in advance. You're pushing it out on the event day, so it's still live, by the account that everyone's seeing it for the first time. And that's really exciting. The guests feel like they're attending something, which I think is important. If there's any sort of vibe, this is something you're pushing out for everyone for the first time, they want to feel that intimacy. Ironically, in virtual, you can make things intimate. I mean, you're seeing someone up close, right? In the ballroom, you could be at table 89 and be so far from the action that you kind of lose focus. Everyone is drawn in to the stage, which is, again, a really exciting opportunity. So what is that? And I think that you kind of nailed it earlier, making sure that we're doing something different within that 40 minutes or 50 minutes. Is it a video? Videos are great. You don't want all videos. Is it a dynamic speaker? Just because someone's a VIP doesn't mean they're an amazing speaker on their camera. So in addition to, of course, all the amazing production value things that Cathy mentioned earlier, such as lighting and audio and a good internet connection, you want someone who's gonna make jokes and can riff. And if there's a technical glitch, roll with it, kind of know what to say and keep the conversation going. Usually that MC is the live element sandwiched in between the pre-recorded moments. And again, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but what is that fundraising presence online? I think a lot of people have opinions on how much you want to ask. I think that also depends on your audience and what they were like in live. Were they hungry for that live appeal, or do they want to be left alone to eat and they're going to open their wallets no matter what? That should factor into how much we're tapping the fundraising element. It's obviously why we're here, but this is going to be here for a long time. So we want to leave breadcrumbs to want to always come back because the event was really snappy and fun to watch.
Thanks, Erin. Anything to add on your part, Cathy?
No, I think, again, is what's the story you're going to tell in your event? Is there a beginning, middle, and an end? Because like Erin said, you don't want to just throw a bunch of things at people. Videos are great, but if they don't connect, then you lose people's interest. So what's the story? What's the connectivity? Why did you want them there? Why should they stay for the 20, 30, 40 minutes that you want them to? So make it appealing because you don't have that in-person connection. So what is the connection point?
It also seems like it's a great opportunity, given how full this year has been, how many ups and downs, mostly downs, especially if you're an organization, at the front lines serving low-income communities. This is an opportunity to sort of share what's happening with the organization and really kind of give an update and stay connected. I think people would, I'm not a fundraiser, so, you guys correct me, but I think people are probably very hungry to just understand how the organization is doing and what it's doing to help its community. So.
Absolutely. I think it's a great time for the donors that have stuck with you and have continued to donate to let them know where that money has gone. It's a great time to highlight some of your partners who quite honestly are on the front lines. What are they doing and how are they existing and surviving? and the great work that they're doing for their clients. So yeah, I think your event, it lends itself to being able to do that, because you don't have to gather all these people in one room. You're able to now show people in different states and all things like that, and what their actual, where the money went.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think that there's such a focus in corporate events and nonprofits on the donors and the sponsors, which we've talked about the myriad of reasons they contribute, but there's also now an emphasis on the individual. I feel like before it was more, you're going because you're part of a table, rarely were there individual ticket sales, but now people care, and people, like exactly what Cathy said, they want to help, whether it's your cause in general, or even, in a subtle way, like how did this pandemic affect your organization? People are dying to do things, like, again, the people running out to donate blood. There's, we can't do a lot, so our hearts are aching to help. So it's not even about the heart-wrenching video and opening my wallet. It's like, what else can I do? Is there something else that can I volunteer with your organization somehow? It's a good time to tap people. Everyone, yeah, you're right, Cathy, is just hungry to do something.
Yeah. And as an organization, I think in going through, such a difficult time with the communities that you serve, it's also an opportunity to acknowledge all the hard work that's been done, particularly for the staff, and celebrate's too strong of a word because this year has been so difficult, but really, like, we made it through. This is, our sort of celebrate resiliency in a way too. Okay, I would love to hear about just some fun, creative things. I'm sure that you guys are tapped into the network of folks putting on these kinds of events, and would just love to hear fun, creative things that you've heard of that have made you smile or think that others might be interested potentially to steal for their own events.
I love a stolen idea. I guess I break this into kind of engagement ideas, maybe fundraising ideas. Obviously, always want to bring it back to fundraising. On the engagement side, I mean, these are all going to sound possibly cheesy right now, but they work. The trivia and contests online on these events is a way to pull people in. I think people are really used to registering, they're on the event, and I'm going to listen, and maybe I'll go to get distracted by my kids or making dinner. If you can find a way to really get them into the chat, I think there's kind of pros and cons. The chat can sometimes be, of course, a little distracting, but it's also a way that people can connect. Oh my gosh, Cathy, I haven't seen you since the gala last year. We watch on our events, the chat kind of erupt with people finding each other across the world. And it's really beautiful to kind of see that moment when people all get on. So, we've done the first person to respond to this trivia question about the organization wins a prize. And then we reach out to them, and it just kind of gives that extra boost of energy. Photo booths are getting in the game. It can be something as simple as that you're taking a picture of yourself, sending it to a number. They put the brandable backdrop on just like you did at a photo booth in the ballroom, and you're getting that. That's a little bit separate from the platform. There's a way to also integrate that into the platform. Everyone loves to see themselves online. I'm convinced of it. So if your photo is scrolling somewhere on that homepage, it's fun. You can essentially bring that step and repeat to your virtual event with some great backdrops. It could be a sponsor ROI. It could be just for the organization. It's a really fun way for people to just have fun and kind of see each other. They feel like they're meeting up again for in a weird way. So those are probably some engagement. I think on the fundraising, it's obviously a different conversation, and not to sound like a broken record, but those goals and KPIs should definitely come into play here, in addition to really, getting a temperature of the energy level of your audience from previous years. A lot of people don't want to break the show for a live appeal or a thermometer. That wasn't something they did in live. They're not going to do it now. Maybe it's just ticket sales sponsorships with a subtle donate now button, is kind of something we've seen. Others really rely on that. We've definitely been to events where the audience just cannot wait for that paddle raise. It's, across the room, people fighting over, being the highest donor. I've seen a lot of this last man, last woman standing online with that, meaning the last person to donate in each category wins a prize. You have to kind of allow a pause for technical and people coming in, but it's almost like an auction, and you'd be shocked at how many people they just want to win. And then the organization wins because they get those last few checks rolling in. And it's really fun and it's competitive. The competition is a huge part of the event online when it comes to fundraising. In addition to taking silent auctions and even raffles online, I would definitely recommend doing that more in a pre-show or a post-show moment. I really think keeping the show organic to the flow and the sophistication of it being an event. Again, don't want to miss those opportunities. if people can win a trip somewhere that they're allowed to travel to, I think that would be amazing. And people are probably really craving that right now. But keep all that in mind so that people have the moment to bid, but the show can really shine. And the last thing I'll say is, don't always just default right to the gala. Maybe consider a walk or a race or a bike-a-thon. Those are all competitive angles that allow you to maybe have your event transcend a few days, but also reach a broader audience. Maybe those people that were never really into the gala scene to begin with, but are always training for a triathlon and care about your cause, would love to just get out of their house and clear their mind and donate. And there's a way that those miles kind of are all integrated seamlessly into the platform. And then it's another competition, right? Everyone sees the leaderboard for the top fundraiser and the leaderboard for the top racer. And that's been really fun to see unfold as well.
Everyone's a sucker for competition, especially now that there's not as many sports on. I feel like people are even more hungry. Yeah. Cathy, how about on your side? Anything that has stood out to you?
Yeah, I think those are so many great ideas. And I feel like part of just sitting and hearing all those is exactly what you need to do when you're planning your event. So hear what the range is, and it's okay if 60% of those won't fit for your organization. It just gets you thinking and gets those creative juices flowing. And I think that's the most important thing. We started this by saying we're not going to have anything specific for each organization. It's because there's so many different people listening. So Erin just listed off, a dozen different things. And it just gets you thinking of what does fit for my organization. So I think that's a really important part of the creativity, is to hear a whole spectrum of things. Even though some of them will never work for your organization, that's okay. The other thing I will say is attend some virtual events. Ones that are not aligned with your organization at all, some that are. And I think that by being an attendee, it makes you a better person to run your own event. So one of the things Erin talked about was a timer, a countdown. I tell you right now, that's something that I love signing on to. Now, half this audience might not like that, but I'm the person, when I click into someone, where I want to know that I'm in the right place. And if you have a countdown, I'm like, okay, I'm in the right place. They're about to start. Just little, now I never heard of that before, but I started attending events and I noticed the ones that had the countdown, I could relax, get my glass of wine ready to watch that event. Whereas the other ones, it's a worry. Am I in the right place? Should I click off? And you don't want to lose somebody before you even start. So, there's a lot of little creative things. You have to figure what works for you. The last thing I will add is that for our Enterprise LA event, there's always an end of event thing that the staff does. And so the last couple of years, we do a flash mob, a dance mob, but the staff does it. So now I helped plan the whole event. The most nerve-wracking point for me was actually getting up and dancing. So I thought when we moved to virtual this year, all right, at least I don't have to dance. But I will say that the staff is now brainstorming, what can we do in the virtual space? What kind of montage can we put together? Because the audience has almost come to expect the staff to do something at the end. And I don't know what that will be just yet, so I can't even give you all the answers. But I'm just throwing it out there. It's just going to be something fun, something creative, and something that is the signature end to that event. And we are going to figure out a way to pull that over. So again, just stay out there, stay creative, and have a little bit of fun with this.
Good. Well, I'm glad this webinar is not giving any spoilers for what that LA is going to be. My colleagues in LA would not be pleased with me. So thank you for keeping that under wraps, sure. Cathy. Well, that's great. I'm going to give an opportunity at the end just for anything else that you two feel like is important for folks to know that we haven't covered. But I guess another just final nuts and bolts, just a sense of staff time, like how much, and maybe it's just seeing personal experience or what the timeline was for others, but how much time should one devote to something like this, or even just on a larger, like how many months, how many weeks should you plan out in order to set yourself up for success?
Man, I think the more time than you'd expect, honestly, especially if you want to do something more custom. A lot of the platforms that are kind of more plug and play, you can do that, in a few weeks, a few months. But that's, again, very plug and play. A lot of them that are more custom, whether it's with labels or sponsorships or integrations, is a lot of time. And also, like venues, people don't really know this, but platforms book up. We've had people say unavailable, which is crazy to me, because I'm like, you're online, you have all these resources, but they have staff and they have time, so they can say no, which I think is kind of not something people really realize. So I think just from a timing standpoint, I think the sweet spot would be several months if you can do it. I mean, most people know when their event was in live. Let's try to keep it around the same time, engage the right partners. It can never hurt to have too much time. The rehearsal side of virtual events is significantly more time consuming, especially if you have multiple speakers or multiple videos. We've done 2 or 3 rehearsals, because the first ones, we just wanted to really work it one more time. And that's something that has to be on everyone's calendar, the platform, the speakers, everything has to be preloaded. You may want to re-edit something. It really, that all the production value you see for really successful events probably had several dry runs. And we recommend, again, doing that. If your event is at 4 o'clock on a Thursday, your rehearsal should be at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday or something, just to get the same lighting, the same bandwidth. We always say we cannot control the internet, but we can control, what people are doing and how they're tapping into the hardware they have. So it's really important to just make sure everyone is aligned on that. In addition to obviously making sure your sponsors are getting their assets in and people are joining at the right time. So the more time, the better, please.
Good. Solid advice. Cathy, anything on your end?
No, I agree with what Erin said.
Yeah,
More
great.
time, the better.
Well, is there anything else, and the answer can be no, we've covered a lot in this conversation, but is there anything else that you feel like you would want to tell your colleagues at other nonprofits across the country who might be thinking about planning or in the midst of planning a digital event?
One thing that I would throw out there is, once you have it all together and you've got the plan, and you have a date and you're ready to go, remember to keep reminding people of the date and the time. You can't remind people enough in this environment where, as much as we've been doing this for months, we all have much different schedules. And as kids go to school and don't go to school and all these pressures, people are being pulled in every different way, we forget to log on to that webinar that we really meant to. We forget that there's an event. So you have to just keep reminding people, remind them of the day, remind them of the date, remind them that it's 2 weeks out, 1 week out, tomorrow, today. So you can't remind people enough, I think.
Great. Simple, but great advice.
Simple, but just remind them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good one, Cathy. I also think, we talked a lot about brainstorming within your organization, and this may not be appropriate for everyone, but maybe pull your stakeholders, pull your donors, pull your audience, people who maybe were there at the event last year, and what they did, whether they were a guest or whether they were part of a larger sponsorship. See how they feel. There may be people that say, I'm donating and coming to your event no matter what. Obviously, that's what we hope. There may be people that say, I really miss networking. I really miss seeing people that I haven't seen in a year that were at a different company, and we always met for our drink in the corner of the bar every year at that event. So see what they want. It can never hurt to really just poll people. It doesn't have to be a 50-page survey monkey. But I think just seeing what they want. A, people love just being asked their opinion on things. And B, it may change your format. It may change the way you approach how you lay this whole event out, which would be really successful for you.
Yeah, and I think it also sets the stage for just greater engagement. People feel like they've got an ownership if they've, been asked, and even if some of their ideas have been contributed. So I think that's another really great tip, Erin. All right. Well, we're kind of keeping to our to Erin's advice, at least, which is about 40 minutes of content here, which is good. And I'll just say that we're planning to follow up in sending out this recording for you all to watch, whenever you're free. There will also be an accompanying, 1 or 2 page tip sheet in case, you want something tangible that you can look back to or share with colleagues that might not be, 40 minutes long. And encourage you all to just reach out if you have specific questions. You can reach out to me at C. Wagner, and I can direct them to Cathy or Erin or other colleagues if that's appropriate. Depending on your question, we're wanting to support you and help you out and support the great work that you're all doing in communities. So this was one small way we thought we could do that. We hope it was helpful, and wish you all the best in planning your virtual fundraising event. Thanks, everyone.